Have you ever felt completely drained after a simple conversation, or found yourself snapping at someone over a minor annoyance, only to realize later that your whole system was overloaded? If you're autistic, ADHD, or both, there's a good chance you've experienced what I call SES bandwidth saturation, when sensory, executive, and social inputs pile up and overwhelm your system. Hi, I'm Essie. I'm an autistic and ADHD therapist, and today I'm going to explore how to better manage this challenge. Every person has a limited capacity for processing sensory, executive, and social information. Think of it like internet bandwidth. Your modem can only handle so much data before it starts buffering. For neurodivergent folks, that bandwidth is often more sensitive and fills up faster than it does with neurotypicals. When we exceed our capacity, our system slows down, glitches, and even crashes. Let's say you have an auditory processing disorder. A conversation in a noisy restaurant doesn't just require listening. You're also filtering out background noise, focusing intensely on the speaker, and trying to keep up with the flow of conversation. That's a huge drain on your bandwidth. The same goes for social interactions. Deciphering tone, reading facial expressions, and remembering past interactions, it's like running multiple apps at once until your brain's operating system crashes. Another example is executive functioning demands. If you're ADHD and you're trying to complete a work assignment while dealing with multiple Slack notifications, an urgent email, a coworker stopping by to ask a quick question, your executive bandwidth quickly becomes maxed out. Tasks that should take 10 minutes suddenly take an hour because your brain keeps switching between them, struggling to refocus each time. Inputs come at us from all directions. A loud siren passing by, that's a sensory input. Constant interruptions while trying to work, that's an executive input. A high energy group chat, that's a social input. If too many inputs hit at once, something's got to give. Out of the three SES bandwidths, sensory input is often the first to overload. Many neurodivergents experience hypersensitivity or hyposensitivity to environmental stimuli. Hypersensitivity can look like noticing sounds others don't, like the hum of fluorescent lights, finding certain noises like chewing or breathing unbearable, misophonia, perceiving everyday sounds as painfully loud. Hyposensitivity, on the other hand, might mean struggling to gauge the volume of your own voice, not registering how loud a space actually is. And then there are processing difficulties like cocktail party deafness, where speech blends into background noise, making it nearly impossible to focus on conversations. And then there are processing difficulties, which I have heard termed cocktail party deafness, where speech blends into background noise, making it nearly impossible to focus on conversations. Sensory triggers aren't just about sound. Visual distractions like a flickering light or too much movement in a cafe can be overwhelming. Touch sensitivities, such as unexpected contact or uncomfortable clothing, can drain bandwidth. Smell and taste, from overpowering perfumes to specific food textures, can also be major factors. For example, an autistic who attends a theme park in the morning may find the sensory input so intense that they're overwhelmed by midday and have to leave early. The combination of flashing lights, constant movement, background music, and the smell of various foods can push their sensory bandwidth to capacity, leading to a shutdown or meltdown. For many neurodivergents, the intensity of their sensory experiences fluctuates. Some days they may feel more resilient, while other times even a mild sensory input can be overwhelming. This can be influenced by factors like sleep quality, stress levels, and overall well-being. When someone is already dealing with multiple stressors, their sensory tolerance diminishes, making overload more likely. A sensory audit can help identify your personal triggers. Think of it as troubleshooting your bandwidth. Consider the following. Sight. colors, lighting, patterns, visual clutter. Sound, noise levels, specific disruptive sounds. Touch, textures, clothing, temperature sensitivity. Smell, scents that cause discomfort. Taste, food textures or flavors that trigger reactions. Track when and where you feel sensory overload. Are certain environments consistently draining? What sensations push you toward shutdown or meltdown? The more aware you are, the better you can manage your bandwidth. Journaling or using a tracking app can be beneficial for monitoring patterns over time. Creating a personalized sensory profile can also aid in recognizing trends. For instance, if you frequently experience sensory overload in grocery stores, you might consider strategies like wearing noise-canceling headphones or shopping during less crowded hours. Personally speaking, I like to go shopping first thing in the morning because I know that there will be easy parking, that the aisles won't be crowded, and that I won't have to wait long in the checkout line. Another example of this is someone noticing that they feel drained after meetings in their office. After conducting a sensory audit, they realized the fluorescent lights and constant typing sounds from coworkers were major contributors. Switching to softer lighting and using noise-canceling earbuds significantly improves their ability to focus and reduces their end-of-day exhaustion. When SES, that is, sensory, executive, and social inputs, stack up, they don't just disappear, they trigger what I call a neurostress response. This can take several forms. Overload. You start feeling anxious, irritable, or unable to focus. Small annoyances become unbearable. Think of it like an internet connection slowing down under too much traffic. Shutdown. Your system freezes, you go nonverbal, disengage, or struggle to express emotions. Others might misinterpret this as being moody or rude, when in reality, you're depleted. Meltdown. The system crashes, intense emotions burst out, sometimes through crying, yelling, or lashing out. Burnout. Long-term saturation leads to exhaustion, depression, and a loss of motivation. If overload is a slow internet connection, burnout is when the modem stops working altogether. A real-world example of shutdown is an autistic college student who struggles with social bandwidth, finding themselves completely silent and unable to engage after attending multiple group study sessions in one day. Their friends think they're upset, but in reality, they just need time alone to recharge before interacting again. Too much exposure to sensory, executive, and social inputs can lead to something I call SES debt. It's that feeling of being completely wiped out, even if you haven't hit full burnout yet. And the tricky part, you don't always notice it building up until you're deep in it. Think of SES debt like an overdraft account. You keep making withdrawals, but if you don't put anything back in, eventually you hit zero. It's just like financial debt. The longer you go without paying it down, the bigger the problem becomes. Let's say you're an autistic working in an office. Every day you're sitting through meetings, forcing eye contact, masking your reactions, and dealing with bright lights and constant chatter. It seems fine at first, but over time, that constant drain on your social and sensory bandwidths starts stacking up. You get more tired, more irritable, and suddenly things that were manageable before feel impossible now. Or maybe you're an ADHDer juggling multiple projects, constantly shifting focus and using hyperfocus to push through exhaustion. You're functioning until you're not. One day you hit a wall and suddenly your brain refuses to cooperate. That's SES debt catching up with you. So how do you recover? It's not as simple as taking a day off. Real recovery means intentional, structured self-care that doesn't give you just a break, but actually replenishes your bandwidth. Here are some daily recovery strategies you can consider using. The first is micro-restoration practices. Tiny resets throughout the day can help prevent SES debt from snowballing. For example, try 5-minute sensory breaks between tasks, stepping outside for fresh air and movement, playing calming music or using noise-canceling headphones. Engaging in intentional sensory rest. Instead of just enduring sensory overload, actively protect your bandwidth. Wear tinted glasses to soften visual strain. Keep earplugs or noise-canceling headphones handy. Create a quiet, dimly lit space at home for decompression. Engage in energy budgeting. Just like financial budgeting, track and allocate your SES energy. Limit social engagements when you're already taxed. Schedule buffer time between high-demand activities. Balance mentally demanding tasks with low-demand ones. If SES debt has been building for a while, you'll need more than just small resets. Deeper recovery means making real adjustments to how you function. Consider extending your downtime. When your SES debt is too high, short breaks won't cut it. You may need several days off or a temporary reduction in workload. A low-stimulation environment to fully reset, a retreat-style break like a weekend getaway, or a quiet staycation. If you need relief from executive bandwidth overload, try using planners, digital apps, or sticky notes to track to-dos. Automate repetitive tasks with reminders and alarms. Delegate when possible to reduce decision fatigue. Gradual sensory rehabilitation can be helpful, especially if chronic SES debt has made certain stimuli unbearable. Slowly reintroduce mild versions of previously overwhelming inputs. Use grounding techniques like holding a comfort object while adjusting. Pair uncomfortable sensations with positive experiences. For example, listening to music you love while spending time in a bright space. SES debt often builds because of external pressures to mask and conform. Long-term recovery means setting better boundaries. Learn to say no to draining commitments without guilt. Validate your own needs and recognize they are legitimate. Reduce masking behaviors and find ways to function authentically. A lot of people mistake coping for true recovery. Coping strategies might help in the moment, but they don't always fix the underlying issue. For example, avoiding responsibilities instead of restructuring them. Binge watching TV or doom scrolling to mentally check out. Using caffeine or alcohol to push through fatigue or overwhelm. While these can offer temporary relief, they may not actually restore your bandwidths. True recovery means building a sustainable routine that prevents recurring SES debt in the first place. Long-term well-being means designing a life that works for you instead of constantly working against your own limits. Advocate for accommodations, whether at work, school, or home. Push for changes that reduce unnecessary stress. Prioritize neurodivergent-friendly environments. Reduce your exposure to spaces that drain you and spend more time in ones that support you. Make self-regulation part of your routine. Instead of recovering only when you crash, build proactive self-care into your daily life. Managing sensory, executive, and social bandwidths isn't about eliminating inputs. That's impossible. It's about knowing your limits, recognizing signs that you might be saturated, and proactively adjusting your environment and habits. By doing so, you can reduce overload, prevent shutdowns and meltdowns, and safeguard yourself against burnout. If this resonates with you, let me know in the comments. Have you experienced SES bandwidth saturation? And if so, what strategies help you manage it? If you found this video helpful, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and share it with anyone you think might benefit from my content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.